The little girl's words hung in the air like frost, her voice barely audible as she clutched her worn teddy bear. "Everyone leaves me," she whispered, eyes downcast. Mark Wilson felt those 3 words pierce his heart like arrows as he knelt before his newly adopted daughter. In that moment, he made a silent promise that would change both their lives forever. Hey everyone, thanks for joining me for today's story. If this opening touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more emotional journeys that remind us of the power of unconditional love. Your support means everything. 6 months earlier, Mark Wilson sat alone in his apartment, staring at the framed photo of his late wife, Sarah. 3 years had passed since the car accident that took her life, yet the emptiness remained, a constant companion in the quiet hours of the night. At 42, Mark had settled into a routine that kept him functioning: wake up, go to work as an architectural engineer, come home, repeat. The walls of his apartment, once filled with laughter and dreams of the family they'd planned to have, now echoed with silence. "I miss you," he whispered to the photograph, running his thumb across Sarah's smiling face. They had been trying for a child when the accident happened. Sometimes, in his darkest moments, Mark wondered if the universe had a cruel sense of humor, taking away not just his wife but the future they had mapped out together. His phone buzzed with a text from his sister, Diane, "Dinner tonight. No excuses. 7 p.m. Mark sighed. Diane had appointed herself his personal guardian since Sarah's death, determined not to let him disappear into his grief. He appreciated her efforts, even when they felt intrusive. Tonight, though, he didn't have the energy to pretend he was moving on. "Not tonight," he texted back. His phone rang immediately. "Mark Wilson, I swear to God," Diane's voice came through, not bothering with a greeting. "If you don't show up tonight, I'm coming over with a moving truck and dragging you out of that mausoleum you call an apartment." "It's not a mausoleum," Mark protested weakly. "When was the last time you changed anything in there?" Sarah's been gone for 3 years, and her coffee mug is still sitting on the counter where she left it. Mark glanced at the blue ceramic mug on the kitchen counter. Sarah had painted it herself at one of those pottery places, decorating it with little yellow stars. "I like seeing it there," he said quietly. Diane's voice softened. "I know you do. And I'm not saying you need to pack away her memory. But Mark, you're still living. And Sarah would kick your ass if she saw you like this." Mark couldn't help but smile at that. Sarah would indeed have kicked his ass. She had been vibrant, full of life, always pushing him to step outside his comfort zone. "Fine," he conceded. "I'll be there at 7. "Good," Diane said, satisfaction evident in her voice. "Oh, and I invited my friend Melissa from work. She's single." Diane. "Just dinner, Mark. Just dinner." Dinner was awkward, as Mark had expected. Melissa was nice enough, a kindergarten teacher with a warm smile and kind eyes, but Mark felt nothing beyond polite interest. The conversation flowed around him, and he contributed when necessary, but his mind kept drifting back to his empty apartment and the blue mug on the counter. "Mark volunteers at the community center," Diane was saying, pulling him back to the present. "He teaches architecture to kids in the after-school program." Melissa's eyes lit up. "Really? That's wonderful. I always think it's so important for children to have positive male role models." Mark shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "It's just once a week. The kids are great, though. They see possibilities where adults see limitations." "That's exactly what I love about teaching kindergarten," Melissa said, leaning forward. "Children haven't learned to doubt themselves yet. Everything is an adventure." For the first time that evening, Mark felt a genuine connection. "There's this one kid, Jaden. He designed a house last week that had slides instead of stairs and a room just for making ice cream." Melissa laughed. "That sounds like heaven to a 5-year-old. "He's actually 8, Mark said, smiling at the memory. "But he's had a rough time. He's in foster care, and I think the class gives him a sense of control he doesn't have elsewhere. You work with foster children? Melissa asked, her expression shifting to something more serious. Some of them, yes. The community center partners with local agencies to provide free activities. Melissa was quiet for a moment, then said, I have a student in my class who just entered the foster system. Her name is Lily. She's 6, and she's having a really hard time adjusting. She barely speaks, and when she does, it's usually to ask when her mom is coming back. Mark felt a pang in his chest. What happened to her mom? Overdose, Melissa said quietly. Lily was alone with her for 2 days before a neighbor checked on them. The table fell silent. Mark tried to imagine the terror of a 6-year-old girl, alone with her dead mother, not understanding what had happened or why her mom wouldn't wake up. The thought made his throat tighten. Is she getting help? He asked finally. Melissa nodded. The school counselor sees her, and her foster family seems nice, but... She trailed off, then shook her head. Sorry, I didn't mean to bring the mood down. No, it's okay, Mark said. Sometimes I think we're too quick to change the subject when things get heavy. Melissa gave him a grateful look. That's true. Anyway, Lily loves to draw. She doesn't talk much, but she'll sit for hours with her colored pencils. I was thinking of finding her some art classes or something similar, something stable she could count on. The community center has an art program on Tuesdays, Mark offered. I could get you the information. That would be great, Melissa said, her smile returning. Diane looked between them, a satisfied expression on her face that made Mark roll his eyes. His sister was nothing if not persistent in her matchmaking efforts. But as the evening continued, Mark found himself genuinely enjoying Melissa's company. Not in a romantic way, his heart wasn't ready for that, but in the way one appreciates finding a kindred spirit. By the time they said goodbye, he had promised to email her information about the art program and had even agreed to meet for coffee the following week to discuss how they might help Lily. The coffee shop was busy when Mark arrived, but he spotted Melissa at a corner table, grading papers with a red pen. She looked up as he approached, her face breaking into a smile. Sorry I'm late, Mark said, setting down his laptop bag. Meeting ran long. No problem. I've been using the time productively, she said, gesturing to the stack of papers. Kindergartners have very strong opinions about the letter E. Mark laughed and went to order his coffee. When he returned, Melissa had cleared away her work. So, I looked into the art program, he said, opening his laptop. They have a class specifically for younger kids on Tuesday afternoons. It's run by a woman named Elena who has a background in art therapy. That sounds perfect, Melissa said, leaning forward to look at the screen. Do you think, would it be possible for me to sit in with Lily the first few times? She's very anxious about new situations. I'm sure that would be fine. I can talk to Elena. Melissa smiled gratefully. Thank you. I've been worried about her. Her foster placement is temporary, and I'm concerned about what will happen when she has to move again. Mark frowned. She's going to be moved. But she's already dealing with so much change. That's the system, Melissa said with a sigh. Her current foster parents are emergency placement only. They take children for short periods until a more permanent situation can be found. And has one been found? Melissa shook her head. Not yet. There's a shortage of foster homes, especially for children with trauma. And Lily. She hesitated. Lily has nightmares. She wakes up screaming sometimes, which can be hard for families with other children. Mark felt a surge of anger at the unfairness of it all. A little girl who had already lost everything now had to deal with being shuffled from home to home because her grief was inconvenient. What about adoption? He asked. Is that a possibility for her? Eventually, maybe. But first they try to find family members who might take her. And the adoption process takes time. She could be in the system for years. Mark nodded, his mind racing with thoughts he couldn't quite articulate. He changed the subject, asking Melissa about her class and telling her about his latest architecture project, but Lily's situation lingered in the back of his mind. That night, as he sat in his quiet apartment, Mark found himself looking at Sarah's photograph again. "What would you do?" he asked aloud, knowing there would be no answer. Sarah had always wanted children. She would have been an amazing mother, patient, loving, full of laughter and creativity. Mark had wanted children too, but after Sarah died, he had packed away that dream along with her clothes and her favorite books. It hurt too much to think about the family they would never have. But now, thinking about Lily, a child with no one, bouncing from home to home, Mark felt something stir within him. A purpose, maybe. Or the beginnings of one. Before he could talk himself out of it, he opened his laptop and typed, "becoming a foster parent," into the search bar. The process was more complicated than Mark had anticipated. There were background checks, home studies, training sessions, and mountains of paperwork. But 6 months after that coffee with Melissa, Mark found himself certified as a foster parent, his spare bedroom transformed from a home office into a child's room. He hadn't specifically requested Lily. In fact, he had been careful not to mention her when speaking with the social workers, not wanting to seem like he was circumventing the system. But when his phone rang on a Tuesday afternoon and the voice on the other end asked if he could take in a 6-year-old girl named Lily Matthews, Mark felt a jolt of recognition. "Her current placement needs to end immediately," the social worker explained. "The foster mother has a family emergency out of state. We're looking for somewhere Lily can stay for at least a few months, possibly longer." "Yes," Mark said without hesitation. "Yes, I can take her." 3 hours later, a car pulled up in front of Mark's apartment building. From his window, he watched as a woman in a business suit emerged from the driver's side and then opened the back door. A small figure stepped out, clutching a backpack and a teddy bear. Even from a distance, Mark recognized Lily from the photos Melissa had shown him, thin, with dark hair that fell in waves around a solemn face. His doorbell rang, and Mark took a deep breath before answering. The social worker, Ms. Patel, greeted him with a tired smile. "Mr. Wilson? I'm Anita Patel. And this is Lily." Lily didn't look up, her gaze fixed on the floor, her small hand gripping the teddy bear so tightly that her knuckles were white. "Hello, Lily," Mark said gently, kneeling down to her level. "I'm Mark. I'm really glad you're here." Lily didn't respond, but Mark hadn't expected her to. Ms. Patel gave him an encouraging nod. "Why don't we go inside?" Mark suggested. "I can show you your room. I wasn't sure what colors you like, so I kept it simple, but we can decorate it however you want." Still no response, but Lily followed when Ms. Patel gently guided her into the apartment. Mark led them to the spare room, now painted a soft blue with white curtains and a colorful quilt on the bed. He had added a small desk by the window, a bookshelf filled with children's books, and a toy chest that remained mostly empty, waiting for Lily's preferences to become clear. "This is your space," Mark told her. "You can make it your own." Lily looked around the room, her expression unreadable. Then, without a word, she went to the bed and sat down, still clutching her teddy bear. Ms. Patel pulled Mark aside. "She doesn't have much," she said quietly. "Just what's in her backpack. Her previous foster family provided some clothes, but she'll need more." Mark nodded. "I'll take care of it. She's been through a lot," Ms. Patel continued. "She's seeing a therapist twice a week, and I've arranged for the appointments to continue. The information is in her file." She handed Mark a folder. "My number is in there too. Call me anytime, day or night, if you need anything." "Thank you," Mark said, glancing back at Lily, who sat motionless on the bed, staring at the wall. After Ms. Patel left, Mark stood awkwardly in the doorway of Lily's room. "Are you hungry?" he asked. "I can make dinner. Or we could order pizza if you'd prefer." Lily didn't answer, didn't even look at him. "Okay," Mark said, trying to keep his voice light. "I'll make something, and you can eat if you're hungry. No pressure." He retreated to the kitchen, his mind racing. What had he gotten himself into? He had no experience with children beyond his weekly architecture class. He had no idea how to connect with a traumatized 6-year-old who wouldn't speak to him. But as he prepared a simple dinner of pasta and sauce, Mark reminded himself why he was doing this. Lily needed stability, needed to know that someone cared about her, that she wasn't alone in the world. He could provide that, even if he wasn't perfect at it. When dinner was ready, Mark set the table for two and then went to Lily's room. She was in the same position, still staring at the wall. "Dinner's ready," he said. "Would you like to come eat at the table, or would you prefer to eat in here tonight?" For the first time, Lily looked at him, her dark eyes assessing. Then she slid off the bed and followed him to the kitchen, still carrying her teddy bear. Mark helped her into a chair and served her a small portion of pasta, not wanting to overwhelm her. He sat across from her and began to eat, trying not to stare as Lily cautiously picked up her fork. "I'm not much of a cook," Mark admitted. "But pasta I can manage. If there are foods you particularly like or don't like, you can tell me, and I'll do my best." Lily took a small bite of pasta, then another. She didn't speak, but she ate, which Mark counted as a win. After dinner, Mark showed Lily the bathroom and helped her find her pajamas in her backpack. He left her to change in privacy, then returned to help her brush her teeth and wash her face. "Do you like to read before bed?" he asked as he led her back to her room. "I could read you a story if you'd like." Lily climbed into bed, pulling the covers up to her chin, her teddy bear tucked securely beside her. She didn't answer Mark's question, but she watched him with those solemn eyes. "I'll take that as a maybe," Mark said with a small smile. He went to the bookshelf and selected a book about a little girl who discovers a magical garden. "How about this one?" When Lily didn't object, Mark sat on the edge of the bed and began to read. He was only a few pages in when he noticed Lily's eyelids drooping. By the time he finished the chapter, she was asleep, her face relaxed in a way it hadn't been while she was awake. Mark carefully set the book aside and stood, looking down at the sleeping child. "Good night, Lily," he whispered. "You're safe here." The first few weeks were challenging. Lily rarely spoke, and when she did, it was in whispers and single words. She had nightmares almost every night, waking up screaming for her mother. Mark would rush to her room, his heart pounding, only to find her huddled against the headboard, tears streaming down her face. "It's okay," he would say, keeping his distance, knowing not to touch her when she was like this. "You're safe, Lily. You're at Mark's house. No one is going to hurt you." Sometimes it took hours for her to calm down enough to sleep again. Mark would sit on the floor beside her bed, talking softly about nothing in particular, his day at work, the birds he had seen in the park, the plans he had for the weekend. Eventually, Lily would lie down again, her teddy bear clutched to her chest, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. During the day, Lily would sit for hours with her colored pencils, drawing intricate pictures that Mark couldn't always decipher. He hung them on the refrigerator anyway, praising her creativity and attention to detail. Melissa visited often, bringing books and art supplies for Lily. The little